Dear students, good morning. This is the class for April 27th for Asia e Africa 1. So let's go back to what we were doing last week, very briefly. Okay, and we're deciding the dates for your exams, so those will be out pretty soon. Obviously, it's just an oral exam, okay, both for the language and the linguistics part. But anyway, we'll talk about that later on. Let's go back to what we were saying last week on Tuesday. So we were looking at the differences between standard English and non-standard English in the inner circle, okay? So we looked at several features like multiple negation, I didn't do nothing, the use of ain't, that is quite spread, quite common, I would say, and or other features like the use of the third person singular s extended to the first and the second person. So I wants, you wants, or he wants. Plus, these non-standard forms of the inner circle Englishes use lots of regularization. So you can find a regularization of be, like we was, you was, they was, or of irregular verbs, okay? So they use irregular verbs, making them regular. Okay, then we saw lots of other features. Okay. We looked at the use of irregular verbs that are used in a non-standard form, like I had went down there, or she come to my house yesterday. Sorry for that. And some features that are also used in other varieties of English that are not in the inner circle, like the completive done, that indicates that an action is complete, has been completed. I done forgot what you wanted. Or the habitual be that is used in the African American vernacular English, but also in other varieties of English used in Africa, for instance, to indicate that an action is habitual, as in she usually be home in the evening. Or a prefixing, what does this mean? That you use an a, that these people use an a before a progressive form, like she was a coming home, or she started a laughing. That is used in rural dialects, especially in rural dialects. Yes, and then I gave you other examples with ain't or double negatives that you can read through. Remember what I told you? Well, actually, I didn't. Something important for your exam, okay? I thought about it a lot, and I think that we can proceed like this. I want you to, of course, look through everything, but more specifically, I want you to study 3 varieties of English. It doesn't matter, inner circle, outer circle, expanding circle, choose what you prefer. 3 varieties of your choice. And then for the exam, I'm going to ask you general theories, general concepts, okay? The ones that you should all know, the difference between Pidgin and Creole, I don't know, a brief pattern, a brief sketch of the history of how English has spread, inner circle, outer circle, expanding circle, okay? This is what I mean by concepts. And then I want you to study more thoroughly 3 varieties of English. Okay, so this should answer your question about, oh my God, should I study every single variety? Should I know every single feature of every single type of English? No, the answer is clearly not. Just focus on 3. Okay? And then, obviously, I'll ask you other questions. I'll write that in the Moodle too, okay, so that it's clear for everybody that I'm not crazy. Of course, I would have never asked you to do something like that. I mean, you can be creative for me. Maybe, I don't know, you want to study Jafaican and you find a Jafaican song, so you can tell me about the song and you can tell me the features about that song. Linguistic features, of course, so you can analyze, I don't know, you can analyze the verbs, you can analyze the adjectives, the nouns, vocabulary in general. Just show me that you studied. So it's both me asking you questions and you proposing something. Let's get into today's class. Today's class is going to be a little boring, you're warned, but we're going to look at some texts. So last week we introduced the topic of legitimate and illegitimate offsprings of English. So how to define, how to name new Englishes. And there's this scholar, af1, I hope I'm not mispronouncing his last name, and he studied post-colonial Englishes. And his idea is that the concept of post-colonial Englishes has to do more with who got them and speak them than with how they developed. We'll look at what this means in a second. Last week I gave you this brief, very short video on post-colonialism to give you an idea, a historical idea of what happened. But what linguists, like the one that I just mentioned, say is that we can divide offsprings, so new Englishes, in legitimate and illegitimate. They consider legitimate the varieties that are spoken by the descendants of European speakers of English. So basically they say that only the Englishes that are used within the inner circle and that all derive from British English are legitimate, whereas everything that is outside of the inner circle, meaning outside circle, outer circle, and expanding circle, are to be considered illegitimate because they are not direct descendants of European speakers of English. The problem with this classification is that there is a mistake at the root of defining languages as legitimate or illegitimate. Because a mother language, gives birth to daughter languages with several interventions and contacts with other languages. Okay? The passage from one mother language, that means from British English, to daughter languages does not occur in a void. There is no such a thing as a legitimate offspring, a direct offspring. It just doesn't happen. Okay? Because languages come into contact and they influence each other. But anyway, so there are scholars that are for and scholars that are against the legitimate, illegitimate division. Today we're going to look at several extracts from several languages that belong to, that come from several varieties of English present and past English. And just like that, I would like you to decide whether you would consider these texts as belonging to legitimate and illegitimate Englishes. Okay? And you can send me a note in the comment box telling me why you think that that specific extract, they're numbered, belongs to a legitimate or an illegitimate English, and what are the features that made you think so. Obviously, for some of them, I'm just not even going to try to read them. But just take a second, look at this. Don't worry, we'll read the translation anyway. Where do you think it comes from? Without looking at the key, of course. What is the historical period it belongs to? What are the features that make you think so? So this one is from Cadman's hymn, and it dates back to 657, 680, more or less. And it's in Northumbrian dialect. I'll read it for you. Maybe if you have the slides, it's better to compare them line by line. So let's see what I can do with that. Maybe I can make it a little smaller so that you can see it. Yeah, that should work. Maybe it's a little too small, but yeah. Okay, so now must we praise the guardian of heaven, the power and conception of the Lord, and all his works as he, eternal Lord, Father of the glory, started every wonder. He first he created heaven as a roof, the holy maker for the sons of men. Then the eternal keeper of mankind furnished the earth below, the land for men. Almighty God and everlasting Lord. Okay, so that's the first extract. You're going to notice that some of them have translation, some don't. The second extract is from Geoffrey Chaucer, so dating 86 or 1400. And so take a look at this. Okay. With this extract, you can already more or less understand everything, even because probably you've already taken an exam of English literature and studied Chaucer. Okay, so consider this extract and would it be legitimate or illegitimate? Also in this case, extract 3, this one dates back to the 1980s. It's a form of Creole, Gula, that is spoken around the US coast from Florida to South Carolina and the Sea Islands. Okay, so read this one silently and see if it makes sense to you. Especially with this extract, I want you to notice, to gather all the characteristics, the features that we've studied about pigeons and creoles and other varieties of English in general, especially focus on simplification, for instance. Okay, so maybe you can write a comment in the comment box and let me and show other colleagues what the main characteristics are. And let me know if you can get the general idea about what they're talking about. Extract number 4 is from a spoken extract of Hiberno English, Irish English. Okay. And you're going to notice that probably only the third line needs translation. And it means he fell while crossing the bridge. So take a second to look at this, to read through this extract. Let's look at extract number 5. In this case, it is from West Virginia in the United States. And you're going to notice that it's a conservative dialect of American English, meaning that it is closer to British English, if I'm correct. Yes, it's closer to the English spoken by the original Elizabeth settlers than any other area in the United States. So read through this extract, please. Okay. If I remember correctly, this is a fictional language. Okay, so this means that there's no Pidgin or Creole that is used this way. But let's see. Okay, this one probably has to be read looking line by line at the translation in English. And now, read extract number 7. This one is from a Nigerian author, Tutula's The Palm Wine Drinkyard. And his English, is influenced by his mother tongue, which is Yoruba, that is an indigenous Nigerian language. And now, extract 8, that is a journal article on Scots. Curious to say about what it's saying. A language may have a well-founded tradition of domestic songs, learned poetry, and even narrative prose, but lacking a register suitable for academic writers, it must remain a half language. And now, last extract. Let me put it all on the same page so that you can see it. See it? So this one is from the Mosquito coast of Nicaragua. And it uses a variety of English that is a sort of melting pot of several languages. So there's a little bit of the English spoken in the 17th and 18th century by British settlers. There's the African slaves, the Indians, Spanish speakers that got into the area in the 19th century. And the curious thing about Mosquito is that it was isolated from mainstream English for about 200 years. Okay, so this is the translation, and I'll put it right over here. So more than explaining each and every extract, every single extract, I want you to send me a comment. So tell me, number one, what are the features of lexis, so words, the grammar, not for pronunciation, of course, because we didn't listen to them, or the discursive styles that are a characteristic of these extracts. But more importantly, I'd like to get a comment from you on what you think are which extracts are the ones that you would consider legitimate, and which ones are the ones that you would consider illegitimate varieties of English, and why. Okay, so now let's move on to something slightly different. We're going to get into section B5, and this one is going to be more specific about the characteristics of Pidgin and Creole languages. Just to give you a brief introduction to the topic, I want you to watch this video. It's about 6 minutes long, and it gives you some main features of the differences between the two. Okay, so pause the video now and watch this other video. And we're back. So remember that the main difference between Pidgin and Creoles is that Pidgin is a language of contact, born from contact. There are no native speakers of a Pidgin. Pidgins are the result of a compromise between two languages, where usually one is a dominant language and the other is not. It is used in restricted contexts. This means that it's used only for communication in some specific areas, right? Situations more than areas, sorry. Creoles are the opposite. They have native speakers, okay? Because their parents use the Pidgin, they use a Creole. And it is used in all social fields. Let's look at some specific characteristics of Pidgins about lexis, pronunciation, and grammar. For today, we're just going to focus on lexis. It's something that we've already done. Yes, of course. This is just getting a little further into the topic. So generally speaking, the lexical elements of Pidgin derive from the dominant language. Okay, remember, it's a language of contact, of interaction, where there's one dominant language and the other is not the dominant language. And so, these pidgins usually have something from French, English, Portuguese, or Dutch. In linguistics, the language that provides for the lexis, that gives the main amount, the main number of words, is called the lexifier language, okay, the strong language. And let's look at some characteristics. Well, generally speaking, in pidgins, concepts are explained with more words than the ones that are used in the dominant language. So a dominant language uses one word. A pidgin would use 3, for instance. This is the case of Tok Pisin. Okay, we said that Tok Pisin is a pidgin spoken in Papua New Guinea. And so these people use the word belong, that clearly comes from the English belong, to say of. In English, you would say my father. In Tok Pisin, you would say something like Papa belong me. And if we think about this concept, okay, same concept with more words. Papa, belong, so of, me. And so this means my father, Papa belong me. And for that same reason, house belong you means your house. Same concept, different number of words. Another characteristic of pidgins is reduplication. This means that you say the same word twice and it becomes an intensifier. For instance, the word talk means talk in English. But if you reduplicate it in Tok Pisin, if you say talk talk, this means chatter, so you talk a lot. Or the word look means look, but if you reduplicate it, if you say look look, this means to stare. Yes, reduplication can be used to intensify something, but it can also be used to avoid confusion. For instance, in some Pacific pidgins, the word sip means ship. And remember when we talked about these characteristics of pidgin, Tok Pisin, of some pidgins. But if you say sip sip, it means sheep. Or piss means peace, but piss means urinate. Or in some Atlantic pidgins, the word was means watch, but was means wash. And let's look at pronunciation. Pidgins simplify language, okay? So that means that there are not as many sounds in pidgin as they are in the original language, the dominant language. For this reason, Tok Pisin only has 5 vowel sounds. A, E, I, O, U. There are other there are creoles, for instance, like the Caribbean Creole that has 12 vowels sounds. If we consider that American English in its general American has 17 vowel sounds and British English in RP has 20 sounds, you can clearly see that Pidgins and Creoles simplify the vowel patterns, the vowel sounds of the dominant language. Okay. For instance, talk Pidgin doesn't make a difference between deep and dip or work and walk. But we know that these are in IPA, in standard English, in inner circle Englishes, there is a difference between deep and dip, work and walk. And this simplification also happens for consonants. So you would hear something like friend that becomes friend, or cold that becomes cold, salt, sol. Or that some sounds, like in Caribbean Creoles, undergo a conflation. This means that instead of saying the, you would hear the. All this simplification, especially with vowels, means that Pidgins have lots of homophones. So words that are spelled differently but pronounced the same. This means that words like peer or pear or peer, that you're going to have lots of, an example in English, pear and pear, okay? That's going to happen a lot in Pidgins. Okay, and that's enough for today. So what did we do? Wait. By the way, if somebody is looking for a sort of summary of, remember that it was a little difficult for you to follow the history of the spread of English. Well, there's this 10-minute video that you can watch if you want that gives you a very good summary of the origins of English and its spread. So 10 very intense 10 minutes, but it's useful if you want to review the first part of the course, the very first classes of the course. So what did we do today? I gave you this little exercise. I asked you to comment on considering whether these extracts belong to a legitimate or illegitimate variety of English. Okay, so we looked at all these extracts, sorry, there are 9 of them. And what are the features that made you make that decision? Then we started the characteristics of Pidgin and Creole languages, and I gave you this video to watch about the difference between the two. And we got into the differences, the characteristics of lexis, pronunciation, and grammar. As for lexis, we said that there are some concepts that use more words than English. Okay, I gave you the example of my father that becomes Papa Bilong Mi in Talk Pidgin. Or the phenomenon of reduplication that can be used to intensify a concept, like talk means talk, but if you say talk, it means chat. Or to avoid confusion. So sip means ship, but if you say sip, reduplicating it, it means sheep for some Pidgins. As for pronunciation, we said that Pidgins usually simplify and reduce the number of sounds that are used in both for vowels and consonants. Okay, so Talk Pidgin has only 5 vowel sounds versus British English that has 20 of them. Okay. or simplification and consonants. So usually these pigeons drop the last letter. And that's for today. Now today's song is Because the Night, Patti Smith. Give me a second to load the page. And here we are. Okay. Take me now, baby, here as I am. Pull me close, try and understand. Desire is hunger, is the fire I breathe. Love is a banquet in which we feed. Come on now, try and understand the way I feel when I'm in your hands. Take my hand, come under cover. They can't hurt you now, can't hurt you now. Because the night belongs to lovers, because the night belongs to lust. Because the night belongs to lovers, because the night belongs to us. Have I doubt when I'm alone? Love is a ring, the telephone. Love is an angel disguised as lust, here in our bed until the morning comes. Come on now, try and understand the way I feel under your command. Take my hand as the sun descends. They can't touch you now, can't touch you now. Because the night belongs to lovers, we love, we sleep, with doubt the vicious circle. Vicious circle turns and burns. Without you, I cannot live. Forgive the yearning burning. I believe it's time to real, to feel. So touch me now, because the night belongs to lovers. If we believe in the night, we trust, because tonight there are two lovers. So I'll put the link in your comment box, in the description box, sorry. Yeah, why not this version? So while it's loading, take some time. Remember what I told you about the exam. I'm going to ask you some general questions, and then I want you to specifically analyze, to study 3 varieties of English. Okay, with all the little details, and maybe if you're creative enough, you can find a song or an excerpt, and we'll talk about that during your oral exam. Okay, remember that there are no written exams. Okay, spread of English, and so the 3 is over here. Okay, thank you very much for watching, and see you tomorrow, Tuesday. Take care, stay safe and healthy. Bye.